folks. Welcome to another episode of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay, just Jay, your resident troublemaker and your resident culture warrior. I hope you are all doing wonderful on this lovely, lovely day. And I hope it's lovely wherever you are. All right, let's get right into it. So, here we have another article that's coming to us from the folks over at Game Rant. And this is the same author as the previous article that I ripped into for being factually incorrect. And this is Alice Rose Dodds. Now, I'm not calling her out for people to go harass her in any way, shape, or form. I would actively encourage you not to do that, because that's kind of an asshole-ish sort of thing to do. But, I mean, Alice, if you're going to write these articles and put them out there, I will give you, as a Tolkien fan, my criticisms of them, and I will call you out by name, the same way that anybody who wants can call me out by name. You know, it's Jay, just Jay. And, you know, people have every right to be like, all right, that Jay, just Jay guy, you know, was being an arrogant douche or whatever, you know. So let's look at what she has to say. She has to say, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power's Galadriel was more accurate than the movies. All right, so right out of the gate, you know we're going to have issues with this one. Okay? Despite criticisms about the change of character, there are over 1,000 years between the two versions, which is true. Okay? But let's see what the crux of her argument is. During the course of his 80 years of life, J.R.R. Tolkien built one of the most in-depth and incredible fantasy realms of his time, and one that has lasted all the way through to modern times. Although there are certain ways the Lord of the Rings trilogy has aged badly, the world itself is still one of the most impeccably created fictional places in history, including a creation myth, an in-depth analysis of its peoples, their languages and cultures throughout the ages, an entire host of mythical beings and creatures, as well as one of the most thoroughly evil villains ever known. The history of this phenomenal and incredibly detailed crafting has barely scratched the surface in any of the adaptations, movie trilogies, and recent Rings of Power series alike, and there are many significant events that happen across the first and second ages that are yet to be explored or that have only briefly been touched upon. All right, so for starters, before we go any further, this right here, that's sort of the implication part of the argument, because I could see where she's going with this. The implication is Tolkien kept changing his stuff. Okay, that's one of the things that she's going to go with. Some of the most significant of these involve the disputes that happened between the Ainur and the Noldor elves, in which Galadriel was heavily involved. There are several Valar references in the Rings of Power series. Because these mighty powerful beings had significant roles in forging Middle-earth and its people, and for the most part, these beings were benevolent and guiding. Unfortunately, Morgoth was among them, and he wanted to destroy everything beautiful that Eru Ilúvatar had created. As part of this mission, he created several wars, which ultimately ended in the death of many, many people, including Galadriel's brothers. This set her down a very different path from the journey that the elves had originally believed their lives would take, and turned her into the angry, headstrong elf shown in the Rings of Power series. And Alice, I'm going to tell you, wrong. Okay? Morgoth did not create several wars. He was instrumental in starting some of them. He didn't, and what I mean by that is he didn't create some. For instance, he did not go to war with the elves initially. He took the Silmarils and placed them in a crown, which he wore. It was Fëanor and his sons and the Noldor, as well as several others, Galadriel being among them, that went hunting him down. Okay, Morgoth did not pick a fight with them. Morgoth was more picking a fight with Manwë and Yavanna and Varda and the other Ainur. Okay, that's who he was really picking a fight with. He wasn't picking a fight with the elves. The elves actually came after him. So let's keep it in perspective. And again, I'm not like I'm making excuses for Morgoth because he was an evil son of a bitch. Like I said, even though it's Tolkien specifically said he tried to keep his Catholicism out of his writings, the reality is Morgoth is sort of like the Middle Earth version of Lucifer. I mean, literally starts off as being the most beautiful, the most powerful amongst the Ainur that Eru creates, and then immediately thinks, well, I can do better. I should be able to create on my own. And basically follows the same formula that you see in the Bible with the fall of Lucifer. So Morgoth's an evil son of a bitch. I'm not arguing that fact, but I'm just saying when you phrase it that he created several wars, I don't know. Like I said, that to me that's a bit of a stretch or oversimplification, or you're just sort of putting your opinion on it. Because like I said, the whole reason why the Noldor left Valinor and went to Middle Earth was they were coming after Morgoth, not because of any higher moral reasoning, like, oh, he's evil or anything like that, but because he stole the Silmarils. Like, literally, they were like, we want our shit back. So, but I digress. Now, the wars with Morgoth ended in the death of many, many people, including Galadriel's brothers. This set her down a very different path from the journey that the elves had originally been. Again, factually incorrect if you read the books. And that's all I have to say about that. I mean, it sounds kind of like I'm being repetitive here, but I mean, the reality is if a lot of what we're about to read in this article, I can already tell, can simply be disputed by saying, go read the book. Go read the books. Read past the Lord of the Rings and the appendices. Okay, read the Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales and histories and all that stuff, and you'll see a lot of, I can already tell a lot of where we're going is not going to be correct. But let's continue. One of the biggest criticisms of the show, besides the pacing being very much a slow burn of the first season, was that the young version of Galadriel didn't feel true to Tolkien's original vision for the character, and that she didn't match up to the far wiser, more ethereal version shown in the Peter Jackson movies, who was heralded as having all of the celestial grace and power of an immortal elf and the ruler of Lorien. However, it would actually be easy to argue that the Rings of Power Galadriel is a more accurate representation of Tolkien's character than the movies, because she certainly did go through this period of anger at the world, rebellion against the powers that be, and challenges in finding her feet in a world full of greater beings who believed they knew better. Wrong. Galadriel is never described as being angry at the world. Rebellion against the powers, and she wasn't rebelling against the powers that be. She wanted certain things, and she just wanted to do them. Okay, she's not rebelling against anybody. And challenges in finding her feet in a world full of greater beings who believed they knew better. Yes, I'm sorry. When you have, I don't know, the people who hung out with the creator of the entire known universe and everything in it, the Ainur and stuff like that, and they're telling you, you shouldn't do something, you shouldn't do this, and you're thinking, well, I'm going to anyway. Yeah, I could say that those greater beings probably knew better. But, what do I know? The history of Middle-earth denotes how the War of Wrath changed many things, and talks about how, quote, thereafter Galadriel had no peace within, for in that testing time amid the strife of the Noldor, she was drawn this way and that. She was proud, strong, and self-willed, as were all the descendants of Finwë save Finarfin, and like her brother Finrod, of all her kin the nearest to her heart, she had dreams of far lands and dominions that might be her own to order as she would without tutelage, unquote. Okay, and literally there you have it. This quote doesn't prove that the insufferable bitch that we saw on the show, that's full of vengeance and is okay with the idea of genocide, and quote unquote ethnically cleansing areas of its orc infestation and stuff like that, is not an accurate representation. And I'm going to use the quote that Alice here chose to use. Because all it says is that it was a time of strife for the Noldor, and she was drawn this way and that, meaning it was a confusing time. Okay, that's all. She was proud, yes. She was strong, yes. Nothing wrong with that. And self-willed. Self-willed does not mean being arrogant and think you know better than everybody around you. Okay, self-willed means you'd say, "Hey, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. So I'm going to go do it." Okay, and I will handle obstacles as they come my way. Okay, that's self-willed. The whole, there's a tempest in me, and I'm going to kill all your children, Adar, and save you for last so you can watch and suffer. That's not self-willed. That's just being an evil, hateful bitch. But I digress. Yes. Again, it even says, as were all the descendants of Finwë and Finarfin. Okay. Yeah, like, nobody's saying that all the elves have to walk around like monks. Okay, that was never a thing. So she was no different than other people in her family. Okay, and like her brother Finrod, she had dreams of far lands and dominions that might be her own to order as she would without tutelage. Yeah, like I mentioned in a previous video, she wanted her own kingdom. She heard the stories of Middle Earth from other elves who had been there, and she wanted to go there and check it out and start her own kingdom. It's literally as simple as that. So let's see. There are several different versions and iterations of her journeys across the next 1,000 years, as explored by the Unfinished Tales, because Tolkien was a man who constantly refined and edited his work. Okay, there you go. I told you that was going to be the argument. It's like, oh, well, he kept changing things. So therefore, he kept changing things. We can interpret things in the way the show is doing it to be correct because Tolkien kept changing things. Okay, I knew that was going to come up. But it is clear from the quotes above that Galadriel did indeed go through a time of great darkness in her heart and mind, which is symbolized by Finrod's dagger in the Amazon series. No, there is nothing to indicate that she went through a time of great darkness in her heart and mind. How you get, quote, thereafter Galadriel had no peace within, for in that testing time, amid the strife of the Noldor, she was drawn this way and that. She was proud, strong, and self-willed, as were all the descendants of Finwë and Finarfin. And like her brother Finwë, who was her bestest buddy ever, she had dreams of far lands and dominions that might be her own to order as she would without tutelage. How do you get that she had great darkness in her heart and mind from that? That seems like kind of a leap to me. Okay, which is symbolized by Finrod's dagger in the Amazon series. They got her relationship with her brother spot on. Okay, I'll give you that one. And movingly portrayed the aftermath of his death and the vengeful orbit that it spun her life into. Again, if you read the books, you know that Finrod ends up in the halls of Mandos, and then he is sent back to Valinor. Okay, where he meets up with his love. Okay, Amarie. Okay, he ends up back with the girl of his dreams. Okay, Galadriel would have known this. See, that's the thing that the show constantly misses. Galadriel, being an elf, would know this. She would know exactly what's going to happen to Finrod. Okay, it's, again, elves and humans. Tolkien's very specific. Okay, humans, when they die, their soul goes to the halls of Mandos briefly. It's judged, and then it goes, quote unquote, beyond the void, assumingly to be one with Iluvatar himself, or to sit in Iluvatar's presence until the end of time, right? Until the final battle happens and Eru comes back, right? That's where men's souls go. That's why Tolkien, he put that in there to sort of give a foundation for in the real world, None of us know what happens after we die. There's different theories, reincarnation and afterlife and heaven and hell and so on and so forth, but none of us know. None of us really know. All we know is we die. Our souls, if you believe in that, go wherever they go. And that's it. And we generally don't see the person again, but we don't know if we're going to meet up with them again in an afterlife. Well, in Tolkien's work, he explains it. That's what happens to men, quote unquote, humans. Elves, it's completely different. Elves' spirits are tied to Arda. As long as there is a planet Arda, okay, as long as there is a Middle Earth, elves' spirits will go, be judged, and then sent back. Okay, which is exactly what happens to Finrod, and Galadriel would have known this. So the whole concept of Galadriel going off on a tangent about vengeance and trying to avenge her brother's death and being filled with anger and hatred and darkness because of her brother's death is not correct, because she wouldn't have done that. She would have known that he's going to go to Mandos and then he's going to get sent back, and I will see him. And remember, these are beings that live for thousands and thousands of years, okay? Even if Finrod's gone for 100 or two, to them, that's like a month, right? And she'd have known this, okay? So, I take exception to that. That's literally reading a lot into it. Let's continue. The idea of, quote, dominions that might be her own, unquote, was portrayed through her quest for Middle-earth, both to help the Southlanders, but also in a desire to pave a future for herself where she isn't suppressed and looked down upon by others, such as Gil-galad, which is, again, I'm going to say it again. Read the books, Alice. Read the books, okay? A dominion that might be her own. She wanted to start her own kingdom. That's it. That's it. Not take over somebody else's land. Or she just wanted to start her own kingdom. She just thought it would be cool to start her own kingdom. She had no intention of helping the Southlanders. Okay, that's entirely made up for the show. Okay, and she's not on this greater quest to save Middle Earth from anything. If you read the books, she's not. She actually, her and Celeborn, they go and they found the city of Eregion. Okay, they are some of the founders of the city of Eregion, and for a while they're in charge of it under Gil-galad. Okay, so Gil-galad looking down upon her, or being suppressed by him, that's you reading your modern day third wave feminist, politics into it. Okay, that is not implied in the books in any way, shape, or form. She is not hostile. There is no hostility between her and Gil-galad in the books. The series suggested that the High King had ulterior motives in sending the elves back to the Undying Lands. Again, strictly the show, not in the books. And portrayed Galadriel as a strong-willed elf who refused to conform when she jumped ship, because she still had a restless desire to do something in the world bigger than the effects of her own small life. Incorrect. Well, you need to pick your poison, Alice, because it was also in one of your previous articles where you say that the reason why she jumped off the ship was because she was filled with that quote unquote dark heart and anger, and wanted to hunt down Sauron, not for the betterment of Middle-earth, not for the betterment of the elves, for vengeance. Literally, revenge was her sole motivator. I mean, literally, according to the Rings of Power paints Galadriel as being worse than Khan in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Like, she is solely driven by revenge, the same way he was, right? So she's not being strong-willed and refused to conform when she jumped ship, right? So you're saying it as if it was this positive thing that she did now. But in a previous article that you wrote, you kind of implied that was, because it was driven by revenge. And now you're saying, well, because she wanted to make a bigger impact on the world than her own small life. You got to pick one. These are the traits that Halbrand saw within her and chose to manipulate and use to his advantage. There was a moment in the show during which it looked like Galadriel and Halbrand could have found love in different circumstances, and it's because they are both fueled by a burning desire to want to lead, to want to shape a world that fits their image of what it should look like, and in some ways, they both achieve this. Sauron in the barrenness of Mordor, and Galadriel in the building of the beautiful elven realm of Lorien, where she is finally able to, quote, order as she would without tutelage, except for her husband, Celeborn. But I digress. The Galadriel of the movies is a beautiful and wistful version of a character who took thousands and thousands of years to reach the wisdom and self-assuredness depicted, whereas the Rings of Power's Galadriel is more accurate to who she was for thousands of years leading up to that point, while she was still on her journey to finding that sanctuary within herself. Alice, darling, booby, I'm going to have to say, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You just don't. Read the Silmarillion. Read the new book, The Fall of Numenor, because he actually lays it out chronologically for you. Read Unfinished Tales. Like, actually read them. Don't skim and use the abridged notes version that you're clearly using. Read them. Okay. Galadriel is never depicted as this sort of troublemaker, I've got a tempest within me, get out of my way if you know what's good for you sort of person. Nope, she is very calm, cool, collected. By the time of the Second Age, she is already got several thousand years under her belt. Okay, she is not some young, naive kid who's just, hasn't gotten control of their feelings and isn't mature yet. Okay, she, by the beginning of the Second Age, she's already the Galadriel we see depicted in Peter Jackson's films. She's already married. Okay, by the year 300 of the Second Age, she's already married. Okay, and I believe Celebrian, her and Celeborn's child, may have already been born at that time. I could be wrong. I would have to check the dates on it. I have it in the books behind me. Okay, she provides counsel for Gil-galad. She's the one that tells Gil-galad and Elrond, hey, this dude Anatar, don't trust him. Don't trust him. There's something about this guy I don't like. He's giving me bad vibes. Don't trust this guy and stuff. And they take her advice. Okay. So this idea that you have that the show depicting this suppressed, strong whammon Galadriel warrior princess with a tempest inside her and genocide just one bad day away, and trying to say that is somehow more accurate than what Peter Jackson gave us in the movies. I'm sorry. I'm calling bullshit on that. I'm sorry. Reach out to me. Shoot me a DM if you want to. I don't know. We can do a live stream and you can try and embarrass me in public and stuff like that. I'm no expert on Tolkien, but I read the books. Okay. And when I see stuff like this, I'm going to call it out because none of what you're saying is valid. Okay. Peter Jackson's films gives us an accurate depiction of Galadriel as Tolkien wrote her. The Rings of Power could have given us an accurate Galadriel, but what they did was they chose to just, because they didn't have access to the books, they chose to just make stuff up. So they turned her into Xena warrior princess. That's essentially what they did, which is nothing like what she's written as in the books. Tolkien lays out her travels through Moria when she takes her daughter and they travel through Moria out, the other side, and they first establish Lothlorien and stuff like that. Her dealings with other people like Gil-galad and Elrond, the dwarves of Moria, the other elves that choose to go with them or that seek sanctuary in Lorien once they have it established. Her husband, remember, you're kind of pointing out that like, oh, well, she finally got to do what she wanted because she got to create this realm without the tutelage of anybody. I'm assuming you meant patriarchal male that was keeping her down. But the reality is she doesn't do that by herself. She does it with her husband. She does it with her husband. Actually, nothing that she did, none of her travels during the Second Age is she doing by herself. She's doing with her husband, Celeborn, because, according to what Tolkien wrote, she comes over to Middle Earth with him. Now, in the original version, she comes over through the Helcaraxe, okay, and she makes that trip north, okay, after the boats had been burned. She makes that trip north. But in his later revisions, if you want to point out how Tolkien was tinkering with the story right up until the end, in later revisions, her and Celeborn are already married, or not necessarily married, they're already together. They're dating, let's say, in Valinor, and they've already got a boat, and they're planning on making the trip to Middle Earth. Okay, and they were about to go to Manwë and ask permission to do so when the whole Feanor thing and the oath of Feanor happens and the kinslaying happens, and so after the kinslaying happens, they figure we may not want to go to Manwë with this right now, so they just hop on their boat and go themselves. But either way, when she's in Middle Earth, okay, when she leaves Valinor, she's not doing anything by herself. She's got her man with her, whether he's her boyfriend or later on her husband, the father of her daughter. She's not doing any of it by herself. So this whole concept of she's just this young, strong-willed woman that's, all these people and forces trying to keep her down, and she's just got this fire inside her, or tempest, to try and do the right thing and create a realm of her own without the tutelage of anybody else. It's all wrong. Just read the books. That's all I have to say about it. Just read the books. Anyway, folks, let me know what you guys think. Do you think The Rings of Power Galadriel is a better or more accurate portrayal of Galadriel than the Lord of the Rings movies, Peter Jackson's or Cate Blanchett's portrayal of Galadriel? And I understand they're different times. I'm sorry, in reference to that specific time. So, Rings of Power, Galadriel, in reference to what we know about the Second Age, for what Tolkien wrote about the Second Age. Do you think The Rings of Power is more accurate in depicting Second Age Galadriel than Peter Jackson was in depicting Third Age Galadriel? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. It's interesting. I'm sorry, Alice, for calling you out by name, but I mean, you got way too many articles. I see how you linked all your other articles in this article, and some of them are just sort of not right. I'm going to call you out. I'm sorry. I just have to. This author of this article has a story in which she actually says, well, hey, the Rings of Power shows us that the elves do actually start out as children. And I'm like, did you think they sprang out fully formed? Because even for an elf, I'm sure that would be pretty painful to have a grown-ass adult, coming out your birth canal there. But I digress. That's another video. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. If you like the video, please like the video. If you feel like sharing, go ahead and do so. If you have not subscribed, I would hope that you would consider it. And if you have subscribed, thank you for coming back. As always, I will keep doing what I'm doing. I will keep taking the slings and arrows so that you guys don't have to, and I will be here leading the charge to defend Tolkien, his legacy, his legendarium, and his work against this. I don't even know what to call it anymore. But yeah, I will talk to you guys on the next one. Until then, be good, be safe, be happy. Peace. I'll see you later.